This same example, so the founder had a thesis that, hey, I'm thinking of the idea that we need a VP of sales, right? I want my VP of sales to close all my big deals, figure out my enterprise motion, manage a team of 15 reps, build sales ops and processes. And so we were like, hey, look, what actually is the problem here? Like, what are you trying to solve? Again, going back to the goals, we are actually suggesting them not to hire a VP of sales because there's two goals there. Number one is this company is going from 2 reps to 15 reps. You need someone who's comfortable enough with managing that kind of a team, but also leading from the front because it's an early stage company, right? And then the enterprise problem is a different one. Like they don't have any big logos right now. They don't know what a long tail motion looks like. So our recommendation for this company is like, don't hire a VP because you don't have that org chart yet for it to be actually a VP of sales. Hire a director who's ready to take on that next step, who, is going to be excited about taking the next step as well. Hire one individual contributor, rockstar enterprise seller. Do founder-led sales with that enterprise person. Let them knock down the doors. Let them bring in their enterprise logo hunting skill set. You do your founder-led sales. Build a process from that side. It gives the CEO a little bit more bandwidth and not managing 15 reps because that is in itself an entire job.
Are you a scaling SaaS founder? Ready to make the leap from leading a team to leading an organization? Join us each week as we refill your think tank with actionable tips and strategies from great business minds and those who don't know yet. This is SaaS Fuel with your host, 5-time entrepreneur, SaaS founder, and globetrotting adventurer, Jeff Maines.
Welcome back to the SaaS Fuel podcast, where a high-performing sales team isn't just about hitting quotas. It's about building momentum, mastering the craft, and making winning the standard, not the surprise. I'm your host, Jeff Maines. I help B2B SaaS founders like you grow from traction to scale. Here, growth is more than just numbers. It's about crafting a future-proof company, premium valuation, and leaders who build a business of significance while living epic, adventurous lives. Why do so many early stage startups hire rock stars only to regret it 6 months later? Anybody else made that mistake? Yeah, it's a classic mistake. You grab a big name sales or marketing exec from a major company expecting instant magic, only to find out they're completely mismatched for the scrappy, chaotic reality of a startup. In this episode, we're diving into why who you hire and when you hire them matters way more than how shiny their resume looks. We'll explore why early stage companies need stage appropriate talent, people who can thrive in uncertainty, they can build from scratch, and aren't afraid to roll up their sleeves. You'll hear the real risks of hiring too senior too soon and how a structured interview process can help you avoid the all too common wrong fit trap. And beyond the resumes and references, we're also talking about the human side of hiring, how to tap into a candidate's true motivations, align them with your company's culture and mission, and build a team that's not just skilled, but that fully buys in for the long haul. And if you've ever been tempted to chase that perfect candidate from a big, shiny brand, you'll learn one of the best startup hires often come from grittier backgrounds. Those who know what it really takes to win when the resources are lean and the stakes are high. And if you're building or rebuilding your team and want to get it right without all the pain, this episode is packed with no fluff, high impact advice that you want to put into action right away. Let's dive in. Our expert guest last Thursday was Phil McGilvray, cash flow strategist and financial literacy advocate. He broke down how entrepreneurs can master their money without getting overwhelmed. Phil's simple, empowering frameworks help business owners take control of cash flow, build profitability, and create financial certainty. No MBA required. And our founder last week was Micah Rimley, CEO of Robin. He shared how hybrid work models are evolving and how intentional leadership AI tools and smart office design are helping companies thrive in this new world of work. If you missed either episode, go back and check them out. Pretty cool stuff. Today's episode is a twofer. We have a double feature with Harry Masters, CEO of the Inflection Group, and Uddhav Mehra, one of Inflection's first key hires. These guys have worked together at previous startups, which I think is just awesome. You ever have somebody that's like great friend, incredible partner, and you're able to take them on to the next deal and the next deal and the next deal? Exactly what we have here, and they're amazing. Together, they specialize in helping high growth tech startups build elite go to market leadership teams that drive scale, revenue, and market expansion. Harry brings deep expertise from decades of tech recruiting, while Udhav focuses on shaping go to market hiring strategies to match the pace and realities of startup growth. And that's a powerful combination. If you want to know how to hire right, hire smart, and build teams that scale companies, not just add headcount and bloat, this is an episode you can't miss. Welcome, Uddhav Mehra and Harry Masters. Hey, Harry. Hey, Uddhav. Welcome to SaaS Fuel.
Thanks, Jeff. Thank you for having us on board.
Absolutely. Tell me a little bit about your background. Spent time in executive search. What really inspired you to step out on your own, start Inflection Group?
That's a long story, Jeff. So hopefully you've got some time. My career is interesting because I initially started in retail. As you can probably tell by my accent, even though I live in LA, I'm not from here originally, but I have lived in the US for about 10 years. Prior to that, I spent some time doing search for buyers and merchandisers for retailers, mostly in the UK and Europe, and spent some time kind of traveling around for probably a good 4 years, like helping open up stores, new locations, finding people, and fell into the executive search world about 10 years ago. Somebody took a chance on me, which I very much appreciate. I came in, did a good job over the first kind of 3 years, built a team, and then got tapped on the shoulder to take on a bigger team, more responsibility, and the rest is history, really. In terms of going out my own, I think it's always about people. I met my kind of business partner through executive search, and subsequently then we got our heads together around what does it need right now. So I found some search firms to be very transactional and not very empathetic towards founders, especially the early stage ones. So having been a founder myself, I now put myself in their shoes around, okay, I'm hiring my first VP of sales, I'm hiring my first VP of marketing. What is that going to cost me? What are the implications of getting that wrong? Because we're going through the same steps ourselves as well. So trying to create something that was more empathetic, more understanding, had more operational expertise infused into it was the genesis of why.
That's very cool. And I love the story. And you're right. There's certainly a transactional nature, especially just a feeling as a founder, just of whether it be recruiters or executive search or technical search, whatever it is, that it's all they're interested in is just selling me a person and moving on to the next deal. And I think
Yeah.
finding a company that is really invested in the growth and really gets founders, understands what we go through, and are willing to walk on that journey with us is really refreshing. Sets
Yeah,
you apart for
totally.
sure.
Yeah, definitely. And another piece of it was candidate success. It was really important to me because ultimately, the reason why you would hire a search firm in the first place is to impact the trajectory of your company with the person that you place. And because we're doing the first part of that, and the second part becomes a little bit more out of our control when it becomes more about orientation versus the actual search itself, we want to try and tie ourselves to that candidate success as much as possible. So, drawing a through line between the objectives of what needs to happen over the first year, 2 years of that person being in seat, and actually staying in touch with that company as well around how that person is performing. So, it isn't just about the transaction. At the beginning, it's like, great, place the person. It doesn't stop there. Uh, that's why we try and be more consultative around that post-placement idea. It's almost like customer success. Because yeah,
Because it's more than just 90 days, we got paid and move on, or hey, not our problem anymore. So you're really
yeah,
looking for those candidates to be successful. How do you support them in their success and make sure that things are going well into the first and second year?
yeah. So quarterly post-placement check-ins with the hiring manager, around what has that person been able to achieve over the first 3, 6, 9, 12 months. While I may not be able to necessarily impact directly what they're doing, I can be involved with what the person is achieving. And I think for the hiring manager, just knowing that person is there and is actually invested in that person's success and taking the time to do it is the important thing.
That's big. What's the most common hiring mistake founders make?
Feel free to fire away here with anything that you have. But I think at the early stage, one of the common problems or challenges, which again, I completely understand, is let's say you're Series A or B There are usually companies in your kind of ecosystem that you really respect and you really love. The challenge is usually they want to attract whoever the top person is at one of those quote unquote like halo companies. But that person that they want, while they're incredibly impressive and while it might work out, the reality is they're probably doing the job that the current client wants them to do. They probably did that 10 years ago, maybe 15
Right.
years ago. So they now may be running massive teams. Obviously, they have this amazing track record and network and etc. But are they the right person for the role that you have today? Or do you need to find the next person that is going to be like that for those halo companies? And the right answer is the second one, but the easy answer is the one who's already done it.
I see that a lot, where they want to go hire the superstar that did something big at some famous company. And whether they really did that or not, I think that's in question a lot of times, whether they were just in the right place at the right time. Did they have a great product, a great brand? And is that even transferable? Is it even the same? Could they do that again? Or was it a one-shot thing?
Yeah. And do you want to?
Yeah, that's a big one.
Is another one. So that person may have already made all the money that they ever need. And are they going to be that same hungry, driven, ambitious, motivated person that they were 10 years ago? And they absolutely can be, but it isn't the norm.
I think that's one of the things that everyone knows to look out for, especially the kind of people that we work with. It's early stage founders, right? Companies that are anywhere between seed to like Series D at the top end. But everyone wants someone who's hungry, who's driven. Part of what we help our partners and our clients do is, hey, how do you define hunger? How do you show that in an interview process? Because front to back in an interview process, you're probably only going to get a chance to meet someone for 5 or 6 hours, right? Depending on how long your interview
Right.
process is. How do we help you identify grit? How do we help you identify the hustle? How do we help you understand like the kind of impact someone wants to have? And there's different ways to show that, but I think that's one of the other things that, as we're talking about these Halo companies and candidates from those Halo companies that Harry's talking about, is people oftentimes get jaded when you spend
Yes.
4 or 5 years of time grinding through that. There's very few people who want to come back and do that again. When you find them and that gene, that's rare, but it's not
Yes.
easy to find, and it's not easy to convince those kinds of candidates to do it all over again.
Yeah, they've already made it to some degree and they don't want to go back and do that again. But founders do that. And I think we think everybody wants to go do that.
Yeah.
We love startups, we build a company and sell it. And then what's the next thing? We just want to go do it again. And so we think that everybody else has that same kind of mindset of they want the pain.
Yeah.
And it's just not the case most of the time.
Gluttons for
Exactly.
punishment. Yep.
Yes, yes. Oh, that's funny. What about company size? If you see companies that are at different life stages, or you take somebody out of a big company, move them to a small one, or a small one and plug them into a big one, how important is it to have a match in size or company stage?
I think at the early stage, it's almost a requirement. So I think someone who's been around the right stage consistently is a must. It's something that we scope out with the companies that we work with. Again, it's a similar thing. If someone's coming from a large public company and they go to a smaller startup and they stay there for 6 to 12 months and then they go back to a big company, that's not the right fit. Stage is like really important. So knowing the ecosystem of companies that exist between Series A, B, and C is key.
I can actually talk about a search I'm doing right now. So, working
Sure.
with a company that just got their Series A, they announced it last week. And without diving too much into the company itself, their ICP is enterprise companies, right? And so I'm helping them hire essentially a founding go to market technical account executive. It's a very hard profile. A technical AE is not a thing that actually exists too much, depending on how technical you want the person to be. So as I'm learning about my clients' like pain points, they're like, yeah, look, we're selling to CTOs, we're selling to VPs of engineering, but these are VPs of engineering at big public companies, like big like dev tool companies. We are looking for someone who is an AE from those big companies to come down and join us, and we're a 25-person company. But because they are coming from that company, we are assuming that they can sell to those companies. It's a $1 million in ARR, 25-person company. The person that I am most excited to share with them is actually someone who was employee number 4 at their current startup, and they've helped scale that 4-person startup to about 150 people today. It's because they know the pains, they've learned from their mistakes right now. And it's one of those like rare breeds of people that are like, yeah, I want to do it all over again.
Yeah.
I'm going to introduce this founder to all the people from their big ICP companies, those big like dev tool companies, but I know which candidate these guys are going to resonate with. It's the guy who's gone through that pain of the stage that they're in right now.
It makes a lot of sense. And do you find that there are maybe some unrealistic expectations for clients? That's a loaded question
All the time.
for you. And what they're asking for, just like in this case, what they're asking for and what they really need, there may be a little bit of a mismatch there, or maybe even for the candidates themselves, that the expectation as they come in is not necessarily realistic.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Harry. I'll come in after you.
Yeah, it goes back. It's interesting, like seeing it from different lenses. As we grow our team, see, I have my own expectations around the types of people that I want to hire, and seeing that from a different lens actually gives me even more empathy than what I had before. Because to build something great, you have to have the best people. How do you go out and get the best people? It's really difficult because there's not very many of them. They're hard to attract. They're already employed, and the companies are doing everything they can to keep them. That expectation, while it's high, I think in most cases it's valid. Sometimes they're overly unrealistic, but it also goes back to the point that we made earlier about you don't necessarily need that person from the company that's 10 times bigger than you, per se. Find that next great person who's going to be the future that for you. And while that doesn't necessarily make it easier to find that person, it does make them slightly easier to attract because they're probably at a company that's more relevantly staged as to where you are, if that makes sense.
It does. It does.
Yeah. So I think I've definitely been through some searches where I have scoured the earth to find the person that they want, and also show them as much information as possible around who exists at these organizations, why certain people wouldn't be a fit, even though they look like it on the surface. And actually, that education part can be hard sometimes because being in search, you can't show your product. Really. It's people. So that can make it difficult. And we're just trying to build out some like visualization tools that will help do that and actually show what exists within their relevant stage of company, a relevant domain of company, et cetera, which actually provides a lot of that information. More to come. But yes, I've been in that situation before.
Adding on to what you're saying, I think, so there's a lot of parallels between recruiting and sales, right? In
Yes.
sales, you typically have a product that you're selling and you're managing expectations one way, right? If you're an early stage company, maybe you're managing expectations both ways, where the client wants something out of your product that it doesn't necessarily have today, but it's part of a feature update that's going to come later. So you manage expectations that way. I feel like in our world, is managing expectations on both sides, because every company, because they want to attract top talent, they're going to sell the dream to the candidate. Every candidate who wants the job is going to sell the dream to the company that they're looking at. I think part of what takes out the transactional nature of this is helping both parties understand that, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Company, as much as you are interviewing this human, this individual, they are also interviewing you. And so I think a big part of what sets Harry's style and my style apart, tooting our own horns here, but it's the whole thing of understanding like the human behind the professional, because oftentimes that in itself helps you build trust with both the companies and the people. But the more you learn about an individual, the more you learn about their fears, their wants, their desires, professionally, personally, it helps you match the right person to the right ethos, logos, pathos of a company, right?
Yes.
Which I think is very important. And that in itself creates a lot of trust in the whole, hey, we're meeting the right person, because recruiting is a lot like professional dating, like we are matchmaking. And what makes a successful match last longer is if the match in aspirations and skill set and backgrounds is right, then that will result in a more long-term successful professional relationship. all of it stems from managing people's expectations and being very transparent in the interviewing process of the positive, the negatives, what to look out for, but what the upside is, and so on and so forth.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think if you don't go deeper than just the resume, then it's much more difficult to find a good match because they are humans after all. And really understanding them more deeply and understanding what they care about, that's where you're talking about matching them to the company and the right culture and having a good fit where everybody is really happy and long term. It's not an accident when that happens.
You can't predict it with 100%, which is what happens, which is what Harry was talking about earlier, right? Once someone is in a job, you can't control their output when they're in the job, but you
Right.
do as much as you possibly can during these 5 to 6 to 7 hours that you get the chance to interview a candidate or interview a company to try and give them as much information that you can for them to make the decisions on what's right for them.
That makes sense.
Mhm.
And when, especially early stage founders are looking for somebody, let's just say marketing, for example. I need you to go find me a marketing person. Do they have expectation? Marketing is so broad. It sounds like it's one role, but it's really probably there's a reason that marketing departments exist. It's because there's expectations or not expectations, but different roles, different expertise within marketing, whether that's brand building, whether it's demand generation, whether it's lead generation, content, ad buying, media buying. There's just you could say marketing could be split into 1,000 things. And hey, I want a marketing person that's great at all this stuff.
Yeah.
You're like, yeah,
Well,
yeah, because I've done it. Yeah.
Jeff, we're going to tap you in for pitches when we are pitching for marketing roles for early stage founders.
It's funny because when you said this person, whether they even exist, the entire universe. And I just thought about some of the people that I've asked for in the past. And now looking back, is wow, that person definitely did not exist.
Yeah, marketing is so multifaceted. There's so many different aspects to it. And again, at the early stage, you need everything. So it's like
Right.
we want to do all of these things. Maybe you haven't
Of
tested it
course.
yet. Who knows? It's a difficult thing to try and narrow somebody down into what's most important because the reality is at the early stage, everything is important.
Right.
And often that person may be hiring for this role for the first time
Happens a
as
lot.
well. So if you come from an engineering background, the likelihood is you may not have hired a first head of marketing before. One of the things that we've actually seen work well, and something that we do with our advisory network, is actually just loop in a person who's done that specific role before. So it's an addition to us on top of my search experience, Udhav's search experience, and knowing the candidates, presenting the candidates, why they're a fit. But sometimes that founder may need an additional support system of someone who has been a marketer before, for example. And it only works if that person has done that role in a type of domain, perhaps at a company that they respect as well.
Makes
So
sense.
they can really learn. They can really learn from that person, which helps with scoping, especially at the beginning of the search. And it's very common for marketing as well because it's one of the most. I think it's probably one of the most misunderstood functions, and there's always that instant gratification that you're looking for from marketing, but it's actually much longer of a play versus sales. Somebody can come in and make an impact on
Right.
the bottom line within, let's say, 3 to 6 months. Marketing might take longer than that. So you have to be willing to invest in it for the long term.
And that's hard as a founder because we want that quick return. And it's easy to wonder, is this person really good? Because it's taking too long. What in our mind, what we say is too long. However we define that.
Again, like you've got your investor pressure, you have
Yeah.
a runway of X amount of months. Marketing is not cheap, both the people and what you have to spend to make an impact. So I get it. It's tough. But again, I think it just goes back to focusing on what's important and also not hiring too senior of a person too soon because the senior person has done all the things that you want them to do, but they're only one person. So it's difficult for them to impact all of these different functions that we talked about quickly. So focusing on 2 or 3 of those things, which they have a good thesis around why it's going to work, hiring somebody who's senior enough so that they can look around the corners and it's not like the blinding in the blind, so to speak, is typically the way to go.
Makes sense.
This
And you
happens.
mentioned engineer founders as well. And it's about 70% of the companies we work with, that's the case, is they're engineers and they haven't hired VP of sales or even sales reps or marketing. And so this is a little bit new territory. How do you support them in that process? Ready to future-proof your company and scale to new heights? Dive into the ultimate resource designed just for SaaS founders and C-suite executives. Champion Leadership Group gives you an unfair advantage in scaling up revenue and outwitting competitors. Imagine solving your biggest scaling headaches and hitting 5, 10, 20 million ARR and beyond with ease. We take away the guesswork and the grunt work and replace it with framework by supporting you with our on demand fractional C suite team, a powerful operating system built into software, and a thriving community of fellow scaling SaaS founders. That's how we make it happen. If you're stuck at your current revenue level, this is your ticket out. Feel like your company is the world's best kept secret? We amplify your success. And hey, if you're already crushing it but too busy to breathe, we got your back. We'll free up 20% of your time in the first month. Now is the time to upgrade from traction to scale. If you're ready to work smarter and not just grind harder, schedule a 10-minute growth brainstorm. Completely free, not a sales call. You can't buy anything on there. And we will pinpoint the number one thing blocking revenue. Visit championleadership.com. That's where leaders evolve and companies transform.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I have empathy for and I understand. I think for us, it is about that advisory piece that we talk about. We aren't pushing candidates on people. If they're an absolute superstar, like best right fit, we'll make a strong recommendation. But I think, again, some people in search, I'm just generalizing here, tend to be quite pushy around who they should hire, and maybe overly so, where people feel pressured. So if they are the right fit, it's getting them to a place where they feel comfortable with it. So if that takes longer, it takes longer. And if they say, no, this is not the right fit, okay, move on. We're not overdoing it, like from that perspective. So I think it's about just trying to show expertise as well as to like why this person is going to impact their business, and also provide as much education as possible or as the person needs or wants.
And oftentimes this can happen through the life cycle of looking for someone as well. So I'll use another live example right now.
Yeah.
So we connected with another technical early stage founder. They just got their Series B. We started working with them, but they were just when they had their Series A, looking for a first time marketing person. I'm not going to say leader. I'm not going to say functional head of. Okay, marketing person.
Sure.
And so the initial thesis was, hey, we think we have a messaging problem. We don't have an awareness problem. So people know us, but people are not swiping their credit card for our PLG motion to become actual subscribers. So we have a resonation problem. So we're looking for a product marketing lead. Okay. As we're going through the discovery process, it comes to 3 weeks into the search, and the founder goes, hey, I think we actually need someone a little bit senior because now we do care about growth. We care about messaging. We care about the connective tissue. So I think transparency is the theme here. And talking about what Harry was saying a second earlier about being pushy, I think you have to be honest with everyone involved in the search process.
Yeah.
About where the strengths are and where the weaknesses are. Because oftentimes when I see that a lot of other search professionals do this, they just talk about the good things that someone has done. They don't talk about, hey, these are the areas let's double click into together as partners as we're interviewing this person through the interview process. One of the people that we sent over, great product marketing person, tactical, combat to combat product marketing, could enable sales all day, would not necessarily know how to take over demand gen or customer marketing or even think about brand through messaging, right? On the other hand, we were like, hey, look, if you are solving a product marketing issue, Mr. Founder, this person is the right person to do it. But the trade-off is you're not going to get XYZ. On the other hand, we introduced them to someone a little bit more senior who may need to hire a junior product marketing person, but we're letting them know, hey, look, these are the strengths. This is what you're getting with this person, but the trade-off is XYZ. Let's go through this interview process together. Let's look at both of these people. And then through this discovery, you decide, and we'll help you decide with our advisory board as well, on which risk you are willing to take. Because it's all about balancing risk with the human beings that you're hiring and where they're good and where they might need a little bit more attention.
I think that's good. Really having that understanding and just the open process, because it happens a lot, especially if it's a role that we're not real familiar with. The things that we learn by interviewing people inform and mold the role as we're talking to them. And what are the things that are important? I thought that was important when we started, but the more I'm hearing and just having the conversations, I think there's something different that we really need out of this role than what I thought in the beginning.
Yeah. And that happens all the time, especially with
Early stage companies. Yeah.
yeah, they may meet somebody that is slightly different to what they thought that they wanted, and that really strikes a chord. They're like, we have that problem too. This person can help us fix it. That's more important than what I thought was wrong in the first place. So again, it's an iterative process. So it just takes time to talk to those people, and then it becomes more educational, as you said.
It does. Here's a tough one. Thinking about an early stage SaaS company and their first go to market hire, VP of sales, head of marketing, or something else.
Depends on what they've got today.
That's the greatest marketing answer ever. It depends, but it does. And how would you advise them on that? How would you help them think about that process? Go to market function. We need to do this. Where do we start?
It starts with the goal. Right? Udhav and I, we did this week.
Yesterday.
Yeah. So the answer will change based on what you're trying to achieve. This particular company is trying to 10x their revenue over the course of the next 12 months, which is lofty.
That is.
And there's certain things that they need to do in order to get there. Another company might be completely different. Mm-hmm. It just depends on what the skills they have today are as well. Is the CEO founder a good salesperson? Are they comfortable taking on sales for X period of time until they get to a certain amount of millions in ARR? Okay. If they are, you might just need to hire a couple of sales reps to help you with the system and providing the CEO a little bit more bandwidth, but they can act as that kind of VP of sales. If they're not able to do that and that's not their skill set, it might be a different answer. Mm. Are they trying to create a new category? That might change the type of marketer that they want to hire, because if you're creating a new category, you're probably not going to hire a demand gen person first. You're going to hire a product marketing person first. It depends.
What's a good way to think about it? Go ahead, Udhav.
On this same example, the founder had a thesis that, hey, I'm thinking of the idea that we need a VP of sales, right? I want my VP of sales to close all my big deals, figure out my enterprise motion, manage a team of 15 reps, build sales ops and processes. And so we were like, hey, look, what actually is the problem here? What are you trying to solve? Again, going back to the goals, we are actually suggesting them not to hire a VP of sales, because there's two goals there. Number one is this company is going from 2 reps to 15 reps. You need someone who's comfortable enough with managing that kind of a team, but also like leading from the front, because it's an early stage company. And then the enterprise problem is a different one. Like, they don't have any big logos right now. They don't know what a long tail motion looks like. And that's going to be a little bit founder led, right? For a certain time. So our recommendation for this company is don't hire a VP, because you don't have that org chart yet for it to be actually a VP of sales. Hire a director who's ready to take on that next step, who, is going to be excited about taking the next step as well. Hire one individual contributor, rockstar enterprise seller. Do founder-led sales with that enterprise person. Let them knock down the doors. Let them bring in their enterprise logo hunting skill set. You do your founder-led sales, build a process from that side. It gives the CEO a little bit more bandwidth and not managing 15 reps, because that is in itself an entire job. And then it'll allow the CEO to do more CEO things, fundraise, make more partnerships, be a thought leader in the industry, because they are creating a new category. So stuff like that.
That's a really good way to think about it. And I love that, just starting with what is it you're trying to accomplish, and then figuring out what's the right strategy. And just even how you broke that down is so much more than probably any other firm would do. And really understanding, here's the plan of we're going to do this and then this, and just thinking about it strategically instead of, we asked for VP of sales, here, I sent you 3 of them. Which one do you like?
Yeah.
A very different experience.
Again, and we're saying no. We're saying
yeah, who does that?
Which is counterintuitive to the business model. But from a long-term standpoint, this will put them in a better place And again, our goal is to work with companies long term. So let's say they do bring on this head of sales and this enterprise rep. That recommendation is going to be right. And in 6 months' time or 12 months' time, when they do need that true VP of sales or another person in the go-to-market
Right.
org, it's going to reflect well on
Of
us.
course.
This business is all about people and the long game.
That's good. As companies continue to grow, they just like this company on that growth trajectory, early stage to growth stage and later A, B, C, and beyond, how should their hiring strategy evolve?
That's a broad question. How should it evolve? I think you can put it in a couple of different buckets where, again, early stage, it tends to be more entrepreneurial. You tend to want to hire people who think more like founders, or perhaps have even been one in the past, is a generally good fit because they can really empathize with what the founder's going through. Once they get a little bit bigger, it becomes more systematic. You need enablement in order to actually plug those people into the companies, make them successful quickly across marketing or sales. And then I think beyond that, it just becomes more systematized, it becomes more process driven, and there's more people to handle that. So there's always going to be pockets of things where perhaps they're building a new product or going to a new market or something like that, where they might need to spin up a new team or hire a different type of profile or something. But generally speaking, yeah, beginning part is more like entrepreneurial and scrappy, so to speak. And then it becomes more process driven because at the beginning, you don't have a blueprint of who you've worked before to make that was successful. As you get a little bit bigger, you probably got that. So and so did well at this. This is why they were great. At the beginning, that doesn't exist. So it's more theoretical. And that's some of the things that they lean on us for. Again, to go back to that same company, the request was what's worked well in the past and what hasn't. Those were our recommendations.
That makes a lot of sense in doing it that way. And that also explains a lot in why big company person goes to small company and struggles because it's a different personality, a different mindset. Maybe they've been in startup world before, maybe they haven't. But showing up and thinking, I thought I would have people to do stuff. And it's you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this is just a general rule of thumb for life in general. You typically want what you don't have.
Sure.
And it's the same for your job. Oh, I've got all this infrastructure around me. I've got all these people. Do we really need these people? I would love to do this something smaller. And then you get there and you're like, ooh, now I remember why.
Yeah.
So
Where are my people now?
yeah, I really, it's 2 years later, so I really don't like writing these decks anymore. I wish I had someone to do this.
Right.
It's a little bit dependent on the person. But again, it goes back to the managing expectations piece. You're almost talking the person out of it to an extent. And I've done that for people that I've hired in the past as well. So these are all the great things about it. This is what's going to be really hard. Are you sure you want to do these things?
He did that to me, actually. So Harry has now made the mistake of hiring me 3 times at 3 different companies. The guy's never going to learn.
Awesome.
And so when we were discussing the whole inflection thing, he was like anti-selling me almost. He's like, it's going to be hard. It's going to be grass. We're going to be at the bottom together. You sure you want to do this? And that's this whole verification process, that the dance you do, you know?
Yeah. Even you said you got a year of experience in 2 months. So that's
Yeah.
it's a lot. There's so much that happens in young companies and startups that you're the person to do it. You don't have the support and the infrastructure and the team, and you can't just throw something over the fence and let somebody else take care of it. It's a bunch of doing, making things happen.
Yeah, 100%. And that's where some of the gratification comes from as well. And that's what people often miss, like at the bigger companies where you don't have as much impact. You can't see your work as
Right.
much. That's ultimately what a lot of people are looking for, is they want to feel that whatever they're doing matters.
Yes. And I
Some
think that's
care about it.
even more true. Go ahead.
So on this theme, I feel like some people care about their impact because they get a lot of meaning from their job, and then some people don't. And they're just like, yeah, my job is my job. It's a means to an end. I like what I do. I love it. No, but does it give me sleepless nights? Also, no. So you have to learn that about, again, the individual that you're talking to.
That's a really valuable insight because the first person that really cares about their impact was going to do really well in a startup because that's where they're going to see that impact and they're going to see it pretty quickly. Where if it's somebody who doesn't want the headache and is happy, not necessarily fulfilled, not making a big impact, but I don't have the stress. I can live the life I want to live. Neither one of those things is bad, but one of them is a terrible fit for a startup.
I wonder which one.
Yeah. If hiring sales and marketing is tough, executives, I think, are just as tough, maybe even more for founders and just not having the experience. What is one simple change they can make to hire better, faster, smarter in just their process or the way they look at this?
There's a few things. There's a broad spectrum of things that people do in the interview process. Some are good and some are bad. So I think interview process in general is something that people could do because some of the companies that are early stage, not a lot of stuff is operationalized. It's like we'll just figure it out type scenario. Do we like this person or not? And that's okay, like to an extent. But I would always recommend if you're meeting a person that you think could be a good fit, you want to prepare for it as if it's an enterprise customer that's talking to you for the first time and taking that style of approach versus just seeing how it goes. So that means better prep on their background. Who do they know? Who you connected to? Because again, like anybody that's an exec coming to an earlier stage company is going to have a lot of questions around why it's going to be successful. And if you're able to surround that person or people that they know and trust that can vouch for said founder, said company, that can make a big difference for the candidate to the company versus the other way around. So I think that piece is important. Having something with enough structure where the right things are being qualified based on what's important. Running that process in a somewhat systematic way so that the candidate knows what to expect, but at the same time allowing some fluidity for additional conversations to happen so that people feel comfortable and confident going into making the decision that they need to make.
I'll add on to what Harry's saying.
Yes.
There's also over process that I see sometimes when early stage companies are hiring for execs. Too many cooks in the kitchen and too many people with veto powers. So oftentimes what Harry and I are doing is helping really like a founding team understand what are you looking for? Okay. What are the goals? How do we break these goals down into digestible interview process where you're not over interviewing someone and you also don't have decision fatigue or decision anxiety towards the end of wanting to make this decision. So structuring
Right.
an interview process like, hey, if you're hiring a chief marketing officer, what is the theme of the conversation with the CEO? What's the theme of the conversation with the chief revenue officer? If there's directors on the marketing, maybe not give them veto power, but have the conversation with the directors that this chief marketing officer is going to come and talk to and have ownership of those functions for. Like, what are the themes of those conversations? You can have something as rigid as like a scorecard or a success criteria, but giving people agency in a structured way to help different parts of the interview process make a holistic decision, I think is something that a lot of early stage companies can learn instead of having every conversation through an interview process be roughly the same. Hey, tell me about you, what you've done. Okay, what kind of
Right.
marketing did you do again? Like that kind. And also keeping it in a structure where every person in the interview process is learning about the candidate from the previous interview. So it's one fluid motion rather than being like, hey, I'm having the same conversation 4 times.
I really like that approach because it's better for the candidate and it's much better for the company because you're understanding different facets of the job, the personality, getting to know the person when you're really focused in on a specific piece of their experience or background in the interview. So it isn't just Groundhog Day, same interview over and over again, because so many of those, that's exactly what they are. And is there any additional value in coming back for a second or third round if it's just repeated the exact same thing?
This comes from a
Could have
horror
just sent the recording.
Jeff, this comes from a horror story. So I was doing a head of growth marketing search for a PLG company, and they'd hired an analyst on the marketing function who was 3 months into the job vetoing like VPs of growth marketing that we
Oh,
were.
wow.
Yeah. So that's where this is the horror story where it came from. And so we came back to the table after 2 months of doing the search and we're like, hey, like, guys, do these people really need to have veto power? And lo and behold, 3 months into the search, the CEO goes, yeah, maybe we don't need to have the analyst have veto power here, because if we're looking at who's been rejecting the most number of people, it's actually the analyst.
And it could be my job is threatened, or I don't like that person. That's not going to be a good boss, or any number of things.
Yeah.
But yeah, having the right people be able to have that say.
Yeah. It's not that their
Super.
voice and opinion isn't important. It's how much weight are you giving each person's opinion in the interview process? Because if you're putting someone in front of an interview process and you're saying like, hey, this is what the plan is, we would like you to interview someone, obviously you value their opinion, but
Yes.
it needs to be weighted as to who the biggest interactions are going to be and who's going to be impacted the most by having this new person, culture, flavor, whatever it is, come in.
Yeah. All the voices matter. Some just matter a lot more.
And it depends for each search.
Yes. That makes sense. What does the future look like? We're in a world of AI now. I think hiring is changing, search is changing. What should founders be prepared for over the next few years? And what is the future of hiring and work?
Yeah, I think there's so many different tools out there at the moment that are just proliferating the market. I think it's very broad, it's very fragmented. I think from a search standpoint, this is more of an operational one. There's different tools like recorders and summarizing tools and things like that I actually think are really helpful and really powerful and can make the interviews more systematic. Pulling in a transcription of all the answers that 10 candidates have said, which one's the best and why. So things like that, I think, are going to become more and more common. Again, similar things to what we use today. Obviously, casting our eye over it based on knowing this world for the last 10 years. So I think like things like that are going to become kind of more and more common, but it's still evolving, right? So there's lots of things that I think are going to come up that are probably going to be pretty impactful. I know Udhav is our resident AI person, so he's more well versed on this stuff than I am.
I love it. Enable yourself as much as you can. There's always going to be a part of search that I feel will need a human touch. And it's what we were talking about earlier in our conversation a little bit of, hey, look, you are connecting human beings to human beings. You really have to get to know them at an individual level before you can make an educated recommendation, either both ways, right? You can make an educated recommendation for a candidate saying, hey, look, I know you're worried about this, but like, this is a good team. This is why it matches to what you are looking for and what you're worried about. I think it's worth a call. Or on the other side, like if there's a founding team that's, hey, we don't know which candidate to hire, I think the power of our suggestion, our experience, having seen so many kinds of companies go through this, we can always you can always learn by association, and you can always learn by looking at what other people are doing in the same
Right.
and we are the conduits of helping those early stage founders realize that, hey, this is another company we helped hire for, this is the same kind of decision making process they went to, and this ultimately the decision that they landed on based off of these factors, does this resonate with you, right? So I feel like in terms of the mechanical tactical things like interview note taking, I will use AI all day every day.
Sure.
Well, when it comes to the actual look, at the end of the day, our job is helping humans, and sometimes recruiters forget that like you are impacting an individual's life. People spend more than 50 to 60% of their lives at their jobs, right?
Yes.
And that's a responsibility that you need to have, right? And you need to have some level of human empathy in order to be able to be comfortable doing that kind of a thing, you know?
Really good. We're wrapping up. If first time SaaS founder, growth stage company, early stage company, looking to make their first executive hire, marketing hire, sales hire, what's one piece of advice that you'd give them?
I think start with the goals. It's a core fundamental. So often we get companies who say, I've got this job description. I was like, that's great. It's a good start, but it's not what you need. So most job descriptions are copies of one another as well. I see people do this all the time where they'll maybe take another company's job description. It's like, sounds really good. Let's do this. But what do you want to do? Like, why are you hiring this person? What is the success criteria? If you're going to look back in a year or 2 years and say, has this person done a great job? what would they have achieved? Those are the things that you can look back at tangibly and be satisfied by. Again, especially if it's something that's a little bit of a longer play, like marketing, for example. So I think that would be my core piece of advice to anybody that's thinking about making a kind of senior level go-to-market hire and their early or growth stage.
How about you, Udhav?
So there's a secret tool that everybody has, and I think it goes both ways. It goes for founders looking for their first time people. It goes for people who are looking for founders as well. As much as you possibly can, back channel everyone. If you see you are connected to a company, you're founder of a company, people are more open to giving you their opinion than you think they are. So for example, there's been many a search where I've, on behalf of a company or behalf of a candidate, I've been like, hey, I see you're connected to this person. Wanted to ask if you're open to like me getting a back channel on XYZ. People will show up the best in an interview process. Companies will show up the best in an interview process.
Absolutely.
But there's a power in network that you don't realize you have. And companies do it all the time. I recommend candidates do it all the time as well. To the question of what can an early stage founder do to help themselves hire the best person, back channel as much as you can.
That's absolute gold. And that's not the answer that I necessarily expected. So I think that's fantastic. But that is absolute gold, something that we way underutilize. Where can people learn more about you and about Inflection Group online?
You can check out LinkedIn page. You can check out the website. Obviously, channels like yours as well. So yeah, come check us out.
Check us out on LinkedIn as well. Connect with us.
Excellent. We'll make sure and link that in the show notes. Harry, Udhav, so great to have you on the show. Thanks for being on SaaS Fuel.
No, thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks again, Harry and Udhav, for coming on the show and sharing your journey and insights. You can learn more about both of these guys and the Inflection Group at theinflectiongroup.com. As always, all links, highlights, resources, and full show notes are available at saasfuel.com. And be sure to check out our YouTube channel as well. It's at Champion Leadership. We have full video episodes, trainings, outtakes, shorts, lots of resources over there for you on YouTube. Thought leaders share. Share this episode with someone who's all about moving from plan to performance. Executors. Everyone who shares this week gets a lifetime supply of unicorn-approved startup buzzwords, delivered weekly via smoke signal from a remote island of product market fit. And everyone who shares this week gets a lifetime supply of unicorn-approved startup buzzwords, delivered weekly via smoke signal from a remote island of product market fit. What if your startup's greatest growth lever isn't just better product or faster sales, but nailing your story and brand early on? Next time, we'll hear from Adam Coughlin, co-founder and CMO at York.ie. He'll show us how to craft powerful messaging, build digital presence, and help founders create personal brands that drive massive momentum. And after that, 1 week from today, how do you turn data into predictive growth? Eran Frendinger, co-founder and CTO of Voyantis, joins us to break down how AI is reshaping growth marketing, user value forecasting, and why the smartest companies are betting big on predictive analytics. I'll see you next time, and as always, enjoy the journey.
Thanks for listening to SaaS Fuel. Full show notes for each episode, which includes a summary, key takeaways, quotes, and any resources mentioned, are available at saasfuel.com. Be sure to follow and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you're enjoying the content and getting value from these episodes, please leave us a rating and review at ratethispodcast.com/SaaSfuel. We'll be sure to read these out on future episodes.